When I say that I have been thinking about this video for probably 4 weeks straight, I am not exaggerating at all. Every day, I've looked forward to the time that I could tell you, let's read all of Throne of Glass and try to do it in 1 week. I'm hyped. I hope you're hyped. You may be thinking, I don't think you can get through that in a week. Maybe not, but I'm gonna try. I think we should just get into the unboxing. I think we've been chit-chatting enough. What do you think? Oh, she's heavy. I got a great deal on these books. We're gonna see if it's worth it. I hope they look okay. I think I bought these for $87 total without tax. For 8 books? Isn't that what's in here? 8 books? I mean, I guess we're gonna see. Okay. I'm so excited to see this series. Wow, they're really throwing it around. It kind of looks tossed and tussled. Dude. Whoa. Okay, here she is. This is crazy. Of course, I've seen the books in every bookstore that I've ever been to, and even in Walmart and Target, but this is so much bigger in person. And also to feel all of them at one time, like, I wonder how much this weighs. I bet it's like 7 pounds. Why is she looking at me like that? Honestly, good for her. I feel like they dropped some of my books in goo before they gave them to me. Actually, when you get close, I don't know if you can see that. There's like some weird smudges. I don't know if that's normal or what.
I have to remove all my clothes.
That's good. My goal of reading this in a week is seeming more hefty after I'm seeing the physical books. Alas, I think I will utilize some audiobooks and read that in tandem with the physical books. Maybe this is controversial, but I won't be starting with the Assassin's Blade. I'll be starting with Throne of Glass, and I'm not going to be doing any tandem reads. I think it just makes it more difficult, and I want to read them as they were originally published. Okay, well, I'm going to go read the first book and see how far I can get tonight. My original plan was to read this series in a week. I don't know what brought me to believe that that was possible. It's not. I've already spent 4 days on Throne of Glass, and then I believe 2 days on Crown of Midnight, which is good speed for the books that we have so far. Like 800-ish pages. But I cannot finish the rest of these books in 1 day, obviously. So it might be more like a 2.5 week adventure. Now I want to get into some spoiler-free commentary. However, I do want to define how I view a spoiler, just because if you're really sensitive to spoilers, maybe you shouldn't watch like a book review video. No shade, no tea. I'm just letting you know because I don't want you to watch this video and get upset if I say something that you consider to be a spoiler. If anything in the story can be easily inferred from the back of the book, I don't consider that to be a spoiler. So I'll be expanding on some events that are mentioned on the back cover, but I'm not going to be going into grave detail about it. I'm mostly going to be sharing vibes, how I felt, if I was surprised, but I'm not going to be mentioning super specific things unless it's very explicitly stated on the back cover. Starting with Throne of Glass. For some reason, I did not know that magic was involved in this book. I think it's a very common thing to know when going into this series because Sarah J. Maas, apparently that's her thing. However, when I read the back of this book, there was nothing about magic. In fact, the first thing says, in a land without magic. But within the first few chapters, you're hearing a story about ancient fae who lived long ago and magic that used to be on the land that is no longer. So I was surprised that magic was involved in anyway because I thought it was going to be very Hunger Games-esque. You have a female heroine who's going to save the world, and that's about it. However, there is magic in this series, which I thought was interesting and surprising. Now, for context, my first fantasy series that I've read this year and ever was Fourth Wing. There's a lot going on there. Honestly, I really enjoyed it, but as the months have gone on, I've looked back and realized that was a bit confusing. So I'm kind of hoping that the next series that I read has simplistic world building. And what do you know? I think Throne of Glass series has an exciting enough world where I am locked in. I am excited to turn the page. I want to know what's happening next. I want to explore and understand what is happening in this world and why things are going wrong. But it's easy to understand. I rarely feel confused. It is explained so thoroughly, and I appreciate that. And some people might like a more complicated world building system, and I think there's a time and place. I'm not really in the mood to read something that's super complex, maybe next time, but I really enjoy that this is easy to understand from the get-go. From the first few chapters, you know exactly what the main character's task is, what she needs to do, and kind of how the story, at least in the first book, will unfold. And I enjoyed that. I didn't know every twist and turn along the way. It's not that predictable, but I did know, okay, we have this main character. She is being taken to this castle and she's going to fight in a competition. Very easy to understand. You get to the meat of the plot very quickly, and I enjoy that because sometimes it's hard for me when a book takes 50 to 75 pages to really introduce you to the main thesis of that story. We get to it right from the get-go in Throne of Glass, and that's something that I really, really like. Something that I did have to do in this book is suspend my belief quite a bit. We all know that with fantasy and some romantasy that there are some things that are just not realistic whatsoever. Have 20-something-year-olds and younger running the government, this authoritative government that somehow defied all of the odds and exerted their authority on all the neighboring countries, and it's just taken over the world. But you have a 22-year-old running the guard. I mean, I've never heard of that. I would love to see their training program. That'd be very interesting. But you do have to suspend your belief. And if you're someone who cannot do that, maybe this is not the series for you. I feel like I can, because the story is gripping enough that I want to know what happens. And sometimes I roll my eyes and say, this prince is in his 20s, the captain of the guard is 22, and this world-class assassin is 18 years old. I kind of just have to brush it off so I can enjoy the actual story and not just focus on these little holes. And there are other classic tropes at play here, like you have the 18-year-old assassin, Selena, who can somehow beat up every single male opponent that approaches her without any exertion. There are a few other things that kind of take me out of the story, like the constant referencing to people's titles. Selena is the assassin. We're never going to forget that. We're never going to forget that Kaol is captain of the guard. And God forbid we forget that Dorian is the crowned prince. Because anytime we mention their name, I feel like every 3 times we read one of their names, it's followed by comma, crowned prince, comma, the assassin, comma, captain of the guard. I feel like I'm at a family reunion and it's like my grandma's coming up to me like, hi, I'm your grandma, hi, nice to meet you. I know who you are, like, I see you every Christmas, like, you don't have to introduce yourself, babe. And the last thing that kind of took me out of the story was using naivety as a plot device, as well as telling instead of showing. So you have Kaol, who's captain of the guard, trying to solve these murders that are happening in the castle amongst the competition who are fighting to be the king's champion. And these murders, they're looking like a pattern. There's a lot of similarities between the different killings, and so he's trying to investigate it. However, he just seems like the dumbest person ever. For someone to be captain of the guard, you would think that he can put 2 and 2 together and try to see, okay, this is a similarity in this murder. That also happened in this murder and this murder. Maybe we should look into that. But you have Selena kind of explaining it to him. He's asking, well, why do you think they would do that? Well, what's wrong? What's the pattern? It's because Sarah J. Maas is a young, unexperienced writer at this point in time, and so she's trying to get Selena to just answer the question for the reader instead of showing us, right? She's not letting us put 2 and 2 together. She's just, this is exactly what's happening. Here are the pattern between the murders. It would be fun if the reader could try to figure that out for ourselves before we're just blatantly told. And then sometimes Kaol's really, really smart when it suits the story. So it kind of doesn't make sense. There's some inconsistencies in these characters, but like I said, I can skip past all of these negatives because overall I'd rate this story a 3.5. And I feel like that's a good score. I typically rate things pretty low, so I think a 3.5 is really great for me. This has been on my mind 24/7. I'm pretty sure I dreamed about Selena last night. And that was absolutely crazy. I thought that this story would be very predictable, and it was not. It really wasn't. And maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm kind of stupid and I can't put 2 and 2 together, but I thought that this was a very unpredictable story based on what I thought was going to happen. On the back of the book, we are told that there is a very sad event that takes place. Then, one terrible night, the secrets they've all been keeping lead to an unspeakable tragedy. As Selena's world shatters, she'll be forced to decide once and for all where her true loyalties lie. When I was reading the book, I kept telling myself, oh, I'm pretty sure the event that's going to happen is blank, blank, blank. What I thought was going to happen did not happen. It was something completely different, and I was shocked. There was also a riddle in this novel, and I thought, oh, this is so obvious. Just go do this one thing, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. Like, why is she being so stupid? I actually had it wrong, and I was like, oh, okay, well, sorry about that, Selena. And then the ending of the book. Huh? maybe I should have known this. Maybe that's common knowledge and normal people put it together. And like I said, maybe I'm an idiot. I did not see that coming until the final few pages. There are so many things throughout this book that made me just kind of like irritated. There are a lot of secrets in this book, and that's not a spoiler, that's in the back. Everyone's keeping secrets. But I honestly didn't understand why these secrets were needing to be kept. Maybe if you've read this book already, maybe you know where I'm coming from, but I just felt like, tell him that. You found this big thing out, why don't you go tell him? Or someone else finds out something huge that would really benefit this other person, and they're like, no, I can't tell him, I can't tell her, but we're never really told why. I felt like it was kind of a cop-out, like, oh, I can't tell Dorian this secret because of his safety. I need to do this myself. Why? Like, that's not really a good reason, in my opinion. So I feel like secrets can sometimes be interesting in a story, but for this novel specifically, I didn't feel like it was necessary. I felt like everything could have worked out better if they would have just communicated. I have an issue with miscommunication in novels if you can't tell. So maybe that's just a me thing, but not something that I really loved. This book actually reminded me of the ACOTAR series, which isn't surprising because it's obviously the same author. But you know how ACOTAR, after you read the full series, you realize that that first novel is kind of like a prequel, but it's kind of like setting up the story. The whole book is setting up the story. That's how I feel about Throne of Glass now after reading Crown of Midnight. I realized, oh, Throne of Glass is just really setting things up, which when you have a series this long, yeah, duh, it makes sense, but I really felt like we got into the meat of the story in this novel. I thought we were getting into the meat of the story in Throne of Glass. No, we weren't even scratching the surface. Crown of Midnight is where it's at, and maybe we'll find out some more things along the way that will get us into the thesis of the series, and I'm wrong about this, but I really feel like the thesis of the series lies in Crown of Midnight, and Throne of Glass was just setting everything up. So we're invested by the time we get to the actual point of the series and what our main character is going to be doing, what she's trying to accomplish. I'm going to spoil one thing about a dog. I do want to talk about Fleetfoot, and if you don't know who Fleetfoot is, it's a dog. And I will be spoiling what happens to Fleetfoot because if you are scared that this dog is going to die, at least in this book he doesn't. So I don't care if you're mad at me that I just spoiled that, because as I was reading this book, Fleetfoot got injured and I was like, if this dog dies, and maybe he'll die later on, I'm gonna let you know, because if you are triggered by like animals dying, I totally get that, and I might regret reading this if this dog dies, for real. But overall, I'd rate this book a 3.75, which, like I said, I usually rate things pretty low. My average on story graph is around a 3.25 to a 3.5. I'm very honest, like I don't feel like hyping up books that don't need to be hyped up. And there's some books that I'll go to bat for, of course. So I think 3.75 is a very solid rating. I just can't rate it any higher based on some of the issues that I had with this novel that I previously talked about. So tonight, we're going back in time to the Assassin's Blade, and I'm very excited! I didn't realize that there were novellas in this book. Let's keep reading. I'm not having a super fun time, to be honest. I'm just not super invested, so I'm gonna try to crank out as much as I can right now. It sounds bad for a book to say I'm gonna crank it out. It sounds like I'm doing homework or trying to finish up work or something, but I mean, that's where we're at. I really need to get to the next book, so let's just keep reading. I just finished this book. When I say just finished, I mean 5 minutes or less ago, I finished this novel. I take every bad thing that I said about it back. I would rate this a 4 out of 5, which is a really good score for me. We're gradually working our way up in the ratings, so I'm very excited to keep reading because I hear that the books get better and better as they go on. But pausing here for a sec, I want to give you my main complaints with this novel first to tell you why I didn't like it, because so many people love this book, and I really did not understand the hype as I was reading it, because what I didn't know is that there were a bunch of novellas. So I'm not really a big fan of novellas because sometimes I feel like it's hard to get immersed in the story, and by the time you're immersed, they're like, okay, the end. I'm like, wait, I was just getting to know you guys. Okay, bye, I guess. So that was one thing that I was kind of not super excited about. And also, we end Crown of Midnight on a huge cliffhanger. There's a reveal, there's a cliffhanger, and you're like, I want to get back to that. And then you get to the first page and they're like, we are assassins. We are the assassins. And you're like, okay, I want to go back to that plotline. And that is one of my main gripes with this book as well, is that I can't even count the amount of times that one of the characters says, we're assassins. Well, as part of the Assassins Guild, well, I mean, what do you expect an assassin to do? Like, I'm so tired of the word assassin. Truly, we need to think of a different word. I'm tired of reading it. I'm tired of listening to it. Ugh! So we started off on a really rocky start just because I wasn't invested at all. And then I thought to myself, well, why even get invested? Because it's just unrelated novellas. I didn't know how this would be laid out. And so we have 5 novellas, and we start out with the assassin and the pirate lord. And I'm like, who cares? Who cares about the pirate lord? And she's traveling to run this errand for her master, and you don't really know what the errand is, and she's just there to get the job done, and then she goes on this side quest, right? And then that's the end of the novella, it seems, and you're thinking, I don't really care, I didn't need to know that. It was my expectation that this would not be chronological, that all these novellas would just be different side quests that Selena did before the events in Throne of Glass, just some of her most notorious crimes. And then I was actually pretty bored during the Assassin and the Healer. To be honest, I think that could have been taken out. Maybe it'll come into play later in the rest of the books, but as of right now, I was like, out, like done. And then we get to the Assassin in the Desert, and that's where my interest is kind of gripped a little bit. And the climax in that story is a lot. My heart was beating so fast during the end of that story. Also, another positive for this novel is that we had mini climaxes, because you have 5 novellas, you have 5 story arcs, which means you have 5 climaxes, which I thought was really interesting. I just felt like I was on Adderall, you know? When you take not the extended release Adderall, and you're prescribed 2 a day because it wears off within a few hours, especially after you get used to taking the medication, you take it and there's a big peak where you're like, you're doing all the stuff that you need to do, and then you drop off, and then you'll take another one and it's like, that's actually like a cycle from hell. I don't take Adderall anymore for that reason. Hashtag don't like it. But that's what this felt like, but in a good way, because I'm reading a book and not taking a medication. To me, I couldn't see how these stories connected until you get to the 3rd novella, which is the Assassin in the Desert. And I realized, okay, all these stories are going to be chronological, and I can see where the last novella is probably going to end us. And I know probably how this is going to end. I just don't know how we get from this point to that point. Overall, I'm still reeling over the ending of this. I mean, I kind of clocked what was going to happen, but it still really sucks and it hurts to read. So I'm feeling pretty sad. I'm not gonna lie. As of right now, everything that I've read previously still stands. Throne of Glass at 3.25, and then Crown of Midnight at 3.75. We're gonna read the back of the book. Heir of Fire. Selena Sardathian has survived deadly contests and shattering heartbreak, but now she must travel to a new land and confront her darkest truth, the truth that could change her life and her future forever. To defeat them, Selena will need the strength not only to fight the evil that is about to be unleashed, but also to harness her inner demons. If she is to win this battle, she must find the courage to face her destiny and burn brighter than ever before. I feel like they gave me no information. I wish it told me a little bit more. That's like super vague. Oh, we're not starting it today. We're just gonna read the first page. Okay. I will give you updates probably throughout this book because this is so big. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just see you. I have no idea when I will see you next. I'm mysterious like that. Man, oh man, it's been a second. Not for you. This has probably like been seconds between the review of this book and the last book. But it's been about a week and a half for me. Before I get started, I just want to say my overall review is a 3 out of 5. But you might think, whoa, you rated that low. To me, a 3 isn't low. I don't want you to think that's a bad rating, because I don't. I just think this book is okay. It's good. Do I think it's great? No. And I'm going to tell you why. I have a few thoughts. Because there are parts of this book that I think are phenomenal. But for majority of the book, I felt like we were lagging a bit. I was waiting for something to happen. And so I kind of want to go through my critiques really quickly. But then after that, I kind of want to focus on the positives, because I don't want to diss on this book. I just want to give an honest review about what I think. We're introduced to more and more characters, and we meet this character named Manon, which I thought her name was Manon, but apparently we pronounce her name fancy or something. Her name's Manon, and she's a witch, and she's soulless. And so I didn't really feel connected to her because, you know, like, I have a soul and I have feelings. But then I came to love the character after seeing her arc and seeing where we ended up at the end of the novel. But like I said, the first half, anytime I got to a chapter in her point of view, I was like, oh, I don't care. Like, I just did not care at all. And actually, I talked to some people who loved Manon from the get-go. I just wasn't in that boat. So you may read the book and love her from the start, but that wasn't me. Our main character, Selena, is being trained. I just really didn't think we needed as many training scenes as we had. It reminded me of Quarter Silver Flames. That book, the first half-ish, kind of dragged for me as well. And it was because a lot of the training sequences did not need to be there. It was the same thing over and over. You have a trainee and a trainer, and the trainee is a woman, and the trainer is a male, and they're trying to learn how to do X thing. And they're terrible at it. And they try over and over again, and they butt heads with their trainer, and then they have a moment where they kind of become closer with their trainer, and things start working out, and then all of a sudden, this girl, over the course of a few weeks, is just very, very good at X thing that she's training for. And it doesn't make a lot of sense. In our case, Selena is learning something new, and she's just so bad at it, and all of a sudden she's really good at it, and it really made the book dry because it felt like nothing was happening. It's like, okay, this is the 5th time we're reading about her like working in the kitchen and then being super tired and then going out and practicing this new skill and then going to bed. That's kind of why I put this in the 3-star section, but there are some things that the book did really, really well that I do want to emphasize. I'm not going to say too much, but chapters 54 and 55. You have a character working through trauma, and I felt like those chapters were extremely impactful. They're very gripping. Felt like those chapters were very inspiring. So everyone has trauma of some sort, whether it's big or small, and I felt like seeing a character work through these really, really hard emotions and come out on top was great to read and felt like a triumph. And also the last 100 and 150 pages really saved the whole book for me, because at first I was like, what am I doing in this series? I don't really like this that much. It's good, it's okay, but I just don't know if I'm feeling it. And then towards the end of the book, I was like, yeah, I'm feeling it. And I also think it's because you have these different characters, you're meeting new characters throughout the book too, and you're seeing all of their story climaxes. It's not just Selena, it's all the people that she's met and some new people too, where you're seeing the story arc hit its peak. And now I'm on to Queen of Shadows. I'm about 50 pages into that, so we'll see how it goes. Really dropped the ball on this one. It's been about a week and a half since I finished Queen of Shadows, so I'm trying to rack my brain to remember everything that I read, and I was looking back at the major plot points and thinking, that happened in this book? That feels like 5 books ago. I'm only a quarter of the way into Empire Storms yet. I'm already starting to forget Queen of Shadows, so I thought I might as well do a quick recap and review of Queen of Shadows before I completely forget the whole book. So here we go. I literally have to have a pro and con list with me because this book was so divisive for me, I feel, because there are so many things that I absolutely loved and adored and was moved by, and there's some other things that I absolutely despise. I'm going to start with pro because I want to seem positive. Also, I fear sometimes I seem too critical of Sarah J. Maas. The other day I heard someone say her name is Sarah J. Maas, so now I have no idea, but I don't really want to look it up, so I'm not. On the pro side, I love Manon's character evolution because I went from someone who just kind of audibly sighed when I had to get to her perspective. Like, I'm reading a chapter from the perspective of Aelin, and then I'm trying to see how far I have to read to get to Manon. Like, that's how good her character growth is, so major points there. Another theme in this novel is female friendship, which I love because I feel like we've gone so long without our main character, Selena, having female friends. It's just too much. Her only friends are men. She only relates to men. She basically acts like a man. So it's finally time for her to form a female friendship and it be genuine. I specifically remember reading towards the end of the book, you have another big reveal. Of course, it's a fantasy series. I don't feel like this is a spoiler to say there's a big reveal at the end of the novel. And there's 2 characters' magic that comes together in such a beautiful way, and the prose was legitimately moving me that I had to go back and reread it. You have terrible things happening in this world. You have kings and overlords just exerting their power over innocent people, threatening to destroy their way of life and everything they know. And sure, it's 2 characters doing magic, right? Like, it doesn't sound super deep, but I think it is, because if you relate it to the real world, you can think about it as they have had to hide their magic for so long. Because 10 years before the events in Throne of Glass, magic vanished and most people lost theirs. So you have people that have magic that maybe aren't supposed to have it, that are hiding parts of themselves, and then you have the end of this book where their magic comes together in such a beautiful way, a public way. It's a good representation of not wanting to hide yourself, being who you are no matter what the cost is, no matter what people think. So I loved not only reading it because the prose is great, but also the application in real life. Now to the things that I did not like. Quite a big list, so I'm going to run through this really fast because I don't want to seem too negative, because I really didn't hate this book. I'm just saying, it's so split for me. There are parts that I loved, like I said, and parts that I just hate. So it's really hard to pick a rating when I have such visceral reactions to what I love and hate. It's hard. There's too much trickery amongst us, I fear. Aylin always has something up her sleeve, and we as the reader or the other characters around her don't know her plotting until after the fact when she's explaining it. And it just all feels too convenient. It kind of feels like, hang on with me here, I'm going to explain this. It kind of feels like when I grew up Mormon and I would always have questions about Joseph Smith having, children as wives and not giving priesthood to people of color, like all these things happening in the church, and I would ask questions and there was always just an answer, like, oh well, it's because of this, or oh well, God's real but you like just can't see him or like talk to him and stuff. Like there's just always a convenient answer, and it kind of feels like that anytime they're in a bit of a pickle. Aylin's like, well, I mean, good thing I did this, and this about a week ago to get us here. It just feels like an easy out, I guess, to anytime have your characters in trouble, having your main character explaining that she already figured out their situation a week ago and just explaining how she fixed it without showing it. They're just telling me. I just don't find that fun because it's multiple times in every novel so far, and it's kind of getting old. I do not care for a lead. It's not that I don't like her, I just don't really care. So anytime I get to her sections, I'm kind of just trying to get through it. I loved the revenge in this novel. It was extremely satisfying. You kind of just have a hatred for this one character for so long, and you finally get to the pinnacle of this relationship between these two characters. But I feel like it happens too late. I mean, there are certain parts where it needed to happen when it did because the characters gained items they needed to move forward in the story, but I feel like it could have happened earlier and they still could have gotten what they needed to go on saving the world. Few last things that I just really did not enjoy. Okay, there's a specific scene. Adian and Aylin are in the bathroom and he needs to pee. So she turns around and sings him a song so he can go to the bathroom. Yeah. Overall, I think this book was very entertaining, so I will give it a 3.5 out of 5. I am a quarter of the way into Empire Storms. Hopefully I can finish that in the next few days. It's getting very interesting, and I think this might be my highest rated book so far. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm on chapter 65 of Empire Storm, so if you've been to this point, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're seeing this mentor figure to this gang of kids who are trying to save the world, right? And we've known this mentor since the very beginning. But we've known that this mentor maybe hasn't told the whole truth, or there's something that she's hiding. And now we're having a flashback to that mentor's actual time being alive. Like, this mentor is like an ancestor, right? Like, she's dead, kind of coming back and guiding these kids to... I call them kids because they are, like... I mean, I guess the Fae are like 400 years old, but they look 20 and they're all hot. But like, that's besides the point. Just now starting to read the part of... based on seeing this mentor's flashback and what actually happened to them when they were alive and their failures, how that's going to come back to bite our main characters now. So I'm just going to read this and then we're going to see what happens. Okay. Yeah, bitch. You deserve to be dead. Sorry. Okay, let's keep going. I'm upset. I'm upset. I still need to keep reading because there's another flashback perspective that I need to read in this chapter. I just don't really want to because I'm pissed off. Oh, and we're not even reading about the main characters that I want to hear their thoughts on. We're at a different perspective. Okay, I need to take a break. I'm going to give a very quick review on Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I read them separately, but I am rating them together because it is the same time frame. They start and end around the same spot, so I feel like I'm going to rate them together. Empire Storms, I will say, is a 4 out of 5, and then Tower of Dawn, I gave a 3.75 out of 5, and I'm going to tell you why. Empire Storms was a lot. It was a lot to deal with emotionally, and then we hopped to Tower of Dawn, which at first when I started reading it, I was like, oh, brother, I want to figure out what happens next in Empire of Storms. But I am glad that we got kind of a palate cleanser. I did rate it lower because it felt slow. I really don't think it should have been over 600 pages. I think we could have gotten a novella from Tower of Dawn and gotten the point. It's basically like a textbook at this point. We have a character who really injured his back, and he's going to this place where there are very skilled healers. and he basically just heals his back the whole time. And then at the end of it, the character hurts his back again. So it felt like there was kind of no reason for all the scenes of him healing his back to just reset. I was a little bit frustrated by that. So I did knock it back a bit because, like I said, we just got so many scenes of the healing. It just felt very repetitive. That could have been condensed, in my opinion. But I am glad it was 2 different books. In case you're wondering, I have started Kingdom of Ash. I started it yesterday, and I am not very far. I think I'm on chapter 5. So we still have a long way to go. There's about 998 pages, I think, to be exact. We'll see how it goes. But I will probably meet with you throughout this novel because I think there's so much here that once I get to the end, I'm not going to remember what happened. So we'll see. I'm in a very chaotic state of mind. I'm on page 338, just started chapter 40. Oh, brother. My jaw's on the floor. Just when I think, oh, I'm really into this perspective, because as you know, Sarah J. Maas in this series, it's third person perspective. We're kind of jumping around, especially now that we have a lot of characters introduced. Kingdom of Ash has been a lot of skipping around from Dorian's perspective, Manon's perspective, Aylin's perspective, Chaos' perspective. All these people are in different places. And so we get a few chapters at a time between each person, it seems like. And then right when I'm starting to care a lot about a story, it seems like we switch over and then I say, oh man, I wish I could keep going with Aylin's perspective. I don't really care about Chaos. And then there's a bomb that's dropped at the end of that chapter and you're like, oh, I care a lot. Then you switch to the next perspective and you're like, oh, now I want to know what's going on with Chaos. I don't care about Manon. And then something else happens to Manon and you're like, wait, what? And then you go back to Aylin and, oh, I'm going to keep reading. I'm out of breath. I can't believe I'm at this point where I have finished the last book and I've read the entirety of the Throne of Glass series. That's crazy to me because I spent so much time with these characters. I originally said I was going to read this series in a week. It took me about 2 months. It feels very strange that it's over because you spend 2 months with characters and then it's over. That feels very strange for me, but I do want to give a review of Kingdom of Ash and then the Throne of Glass series as a whole from a bird's eye view now that I finished it. So starting with Kingdom of Ash, I know I already did a mid-reading vlog, but now that I finished it, I just want to give not necessarily in-depth thoughts, but a summary of my feelings about it. I loved it. I wouldn't rate it higher than any of the other books. I gave it 4 stars. I think there are 3 books tied for 4 stars, which are the highest rating books I've given for the series, and that's The Assassin's Blade, Empire Storms, and Kingdom of Ash. And I couldn't rate it higher than 4 stars because of certain aspects that did feel a little bit young adult, and I'm not in love with Fae stories. I think they're fun, and I think they're entertaining. I'm not in love with the territorial man trope, and that's exactly what Fae males are. I don't like calling men males. I don't like that they can smell their girlfriends. Like, that's just kind of weird to me, but I mean, people like that, and that's cool. I don't hate it enough to not read it. It's just not my favorite thing in the world. Overall, there were some really great moments. There's characters that we met in the previous book or two, like an old man who hates everyone trope that kind of softens and you learn to love him. Loved moments like that. There are characters that are not there by the end of the book because maybe they sacrifice themselves in battle or they die in some other way, which is also very sad. But at the same time, people said that this series would wreck me. And if I'm being honest, I don't feel that way. Maybe it's because it was overhyped. I feel like if no one had said anything, maybe I would feel differently. But people told me I would be sobbing, that I shouldn't bring the book to work because I would be so sad, that I wouldn't be able to handle it. And yes, there are moments that were sad, but I didn't feel so connected to the book that I felt like crying. And maybe it's because I thought, based on what people were telling me, I thought every single character died. Kingdom of Ash. I thought the kingdom would be burned to ash. That was my expectation. That somehow they would save the world, but everyone would be sacrificed for the world to be saved for future generations somehow. And that our clan of main characters, because by the last book there's like 15 main characters, they would all be dead. That's not the case. Not everyone makes it, but I wish it wasn't so exaggerated. This is the saddest thing ever because it just really skewed my expectations a little bit. And I'm not saying that I didn't feel emotional during this series at all. Specifically in the last novel, there were a lot of moments where I felt emotional. Maybe not overly sad and wanting to cry, but there were parts that tugged at my heartstrings. For example, you have a main character in this last book, Kingdom of Ash, that's chanting over and over again in her head, in the face of adversity, I will not yield. And she doesn't. I felt proud of this character. I felt like I knew her in that moment. However, there were aspects afterwards where you think, oh, now this character is going to die. This is their last moment. They sacrificed themselves and they're not going to make it out. And they did. Sometimes I feel like death is necessary in a novel. And it did happen a few times, but this makes me sound like a sadist. I think it should have happened more. When you're on the edge of a character dying and they don't die, and it happens again and they still don't die, it's like plot armor. It's just happened more than once with more than one character where they're on the brink of death, or maybe they're already dead and they're totally fine. Oh, we actually have this one option that no one has brought up until right now. We can actually save them. And then some of the deaths that happened I didn't feel like were necessary. Like, did you really have to do that? If you've seen Stranger Things, like when Eddie sacrifices himself and dies, it's like, bro, I really don't think you needed to do that. I think maybe you could have gotten away. We should have tried that first instead of you ripping a 10-minute guitar solo. And there's a lot of aspects in this book too, in all the books in this series, to be honest, where you're like, I don't know how they're gonna get out of this one. And one character's like, well, little did you know, for the past 3 months, I've been plotting. Okay. Plot armor is kind of all over the series, and another reason why I can't rate any of the books over 4. But were they still extremely entertaining? Yes. Did I feel captivated by them? Yes. Do I feel emotionally tied to the characters? Yes. So overall, do I think the series is overhyped? Yes. Am I glad I read it? Also yes. I don't regret it. I think people speak so highly of it like it's Shakespearean or something, but maybe that's just what they like, and I can't judge because I did like it. But I do want to move on to some other books and series later. I'm thinking about reading Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I'm reading People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry right now. And I also want to read some more classics. So we'll see what I get into next. But that is my full reading vlog of the Throne of Glass series with my last review. It's weird that it's over. I feel very strange that I'm not going to be talking to the camera about this book series anymore. But I'll see you next time talking about a different book. Bye.
I forgot to add, Fleetfoot does not die. He's alive in the end. Okay.